Hi, I'm Kristen.
Hi, I'm Rachel.
Welcome to FAB Entrepreneurs. We are your guides to running your fashion, accessory, or beauty business online.
Today we're going to be talking about how to run a fab business when you don't live in a fab city. So, Kristen and I both lived in a fab city. We lived in New York and we met in New York, which is probably the most fab city that you can live in.
Well, I think there are a ton of fashion cities. I'm personally would love to live in like Paris or somewhere, like try this whole thing. You live, well, wait, now you
I did live in Paris. Yes, I did live in Paris and I was a student. I have to say that even though I went to a fashion school and I lived in Paris, I felt fashion was more in my everyday when I lived in New York.
that's
Just
interesting.
the kind of like the diversity that I saw in New York was so much more interesting than in Paris. So I don't know whether that was just because it was 5 years later that I was in New York and things have kind of progressed a bit. But I just love New York anyway, so I'm always going to say that it's the best of everything. But yeah, so we neither of us live in New York anymore. So I'm in England in a tiny, tiny village called Bramley, Hampshire. And it is the furthest thing from a fab city that you can get in the UK. I can get into London, but it takes about an hour and a half and is very expensive. So it's something that I don't do very often. What about you, Kristen?
So I feel like I need to explain to Americans that are listening that like an hour and a half is really far for British people.
Oh, okay, yeah, sorry. Anything more than 15 minutes.
So I live right now in Memphis, Tennessee. The closest cities are 3 to 6 hours away. The closest big cities are 3 to 6 hours away. New York is like a 20-hour drive. I don't even know how far LA is. It's probably like several days. So that's what I'm really working with in terms of timelines. And Memphis is where I grew up, and it is trying to be a fashion city.
I think it's interesting that both of us actually started our fab businesses once we left a fab city.
Yeah.
So we didn't I worked in fashion, I worked in corporate, I had a freelance side hustle, which I can, of course say is running your own business, but I didn't actually start my own legit business that I felt was a legit business until I was already out of a fab city. And it was kind of a means to an end because I was working from home and wanted to have something more creative and fashion oriented, which was what I had done in my career. And I was kind of like, well, I'm not planning on moving to a fab city anytime soon, but I really want to start my business. I'm just going to go ahead and do it anyway and make it work. And that's the reason that we wanted to talk to you guys about this today, is because we're both making it work. And so let's talk a little bit about how we're doing that.
Yeah, actually, that's really interesting because I had several people. I went to a networking event last night, and I had several people come up to me and ask me, if the only reason that I was able to work in fashion is because I lived in New York and I had all of my contacts from New York. And while I did start dabbling in the fashion industry when I was living in New York, I wasn't really making a living or getting paid or doing anything. It was all like very much a hobby. It was when I moved back to
Mm-hmm.
Memphis,
Same.
I was like, oh, you know what? This is something that I want to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, there are several ways that you can make this work. A lot of it is obviously the internet. Um,
Yes, we are so lucky that we live in this time when you can have a business anywhere in the world and you can run it online. And yeah, I mean, there are so many advantages actually to not living in a fab city that you can kind of offset the advantages of living in a fab city with those. For example, we can get office space for so cheap compared to, it would just be unimaginable for me at this point in my business to rent out office space, maybe hot desking, but definitely not rent office space in Manhattan or somewhere I would want to go in Brooklyn. So
and I even lived in Queens, but it's not. it's not that much cheaper. And especially compared to here, like here, not only is the rent cheaper, but office space is cheaper, getting around, like everything is just so much cheaper. Like New York does have perks, and yes, you're surrounded by so many wonderful and interesting people, but then you have to like actually like make that work and afford it, and
Exactly.
out there.
Yes. So as we were saying, the internet is a great way for you guys to get into the FAB business world without having to move or relocate. So really take advantage of social media and make sure that you're posting multiple times a week and that you're posting really interesting content, because just because you live in somewhere that you consider to be quite dull and unfashionable doesn't mean that you can't curate this very fashionable world via your social media.
On that, also though, just because like if you're like me, like I always was like so excited to get away and go to New York because it was just this like shining beacon of salvation. And yeah, there's a lot of really, really great things about it. But if you just kind of look around, there are really great things that are local as well.
Yeah.
You can still dress up, you can go to the right events, you can find different fashion and style things out there. They may not be, you know, a fashion week, for example, where everyone flies in from around the world, but there are still fashionable events around you.
There are, and if you're lucky enough that you can get to a fab city, like I said, at an hour and a half, it does feel like really like an arduous journey for me. But as Kristen pointed out, it's not that bad. So I do make it in maybe like once a month. And when I go, I really maximize on my time there, completely capitalize on all my photographs. I go to several museums, take photos of everything, and then I'll schedule those posts out over the next few months, so that it kind of looks like I'm going into London a lot more than I am, or maybe I even live in London as far as my clients are concerned, because I do not put my mailing address at the bottom of my email or on my website. Obviously, when they ask me up front, when they meet me in person or at trade shows where I'm based, I of course tell them that I'm based in Hampshire, but I don't advertise the fact that I'm not living in the city. And whenever anyone requests a sample or a hanger or anything, I just put it in the post, and it's not that difficult to just post it. You can, you know, if you get organized, I buy my envelopes in bulk, just things like that, make it just easier than every time you go, you have to go buy a separate envelope. So just like plan on the fact that you are going to have to post things rather than take them in person or have like someone drop them off for you. So just really like, you just got to be a bit more organized, I think, is the main takeaway here.
Yeah, actually, that's a really great thing because I was not organized the first few months when I moved down here. And so I was overnighting a lot of things, which adds up.
Yeah. Yes, it does. It does. Definitely. Another great way you can use the internet is to really get on there and start connecting with people. When I think back, I really wasn't talking to that many people. It's not like I was walking down the streets of New York and saying, hey, do you work in fashion? Hey, do you want to work with me? Just because I felt that my particular niche of fashion in textile design was just quite small. And so I wouldn't necessarily meet someone who needed a textile designer at a fashion networking event. So I think it is actually even easier, of course, when you're on LinkedIn or maybe even Facebook if you're B2C, to just kind of meet people. And when I started out, I was emailing people, I was connecting with them on LinkedIn, just introducing myself, completely cold contacting them. And I actually got a lot of people in really cool brands who would respond to me, because LinkedIn is just such a great resource for us as business owners. And I think people understand, when you start a business, it's kind of the best way to meet people. And you just got to get over that fear that I had a lot of fear at the beginning that I was harassing people, or it was rude, or I think I actually used the term burn bridges by contacting them on LinkedIn, because what if I met them in person and then they were like, oh, there's that shady girl who like contacted me on LinkedIn? They won't remember. So it's okay, and you should do it, because you never know who's going to email you back. And actually, one of my favorite brands was one of the first people that I reached out to, and she did email me back and did request to see my work. So it does work out. Do it.
That's amazing. I really don't use LinkedIn as much as I should. I love connecting with people locally, believe it or not. I did that in New York all the time. So like before I even worked in the industry, I was still going to industry events because I was like, I just want to meet people.
Yeah, well, and you've always had a general interest in fashion, accessories, and beauty, so it makes sense like to socialize with other people who have that interest.
Exactly. And so it was actually going to all of these networking events in New York that I was like, oh, I can kind of do this. Like I would talk to people and I would ask them all of these questions on how they got started and what they loved and what they didn't love and like what did they wish they knew, all kinds of questions. And I even, when I realized that I wanted to focus on knitwear, I did exactly the same thing, just wasn't through LinkedIn. I contacted about 30 designers whose work that I really liked. And I was like, can I just talk to you? And I would say I got about maybe half responded and were like, yeah, of course, ask me anything you want to know. And
yeah,
people are just so happy to talk, and you never know who you're talking to. It's a little easier if you're living in a fab city, but even here in Memphis, when I just talk about fashion because I love it so much, right? And you would be surprised at the number of opportunities that come up when you talk about it.
Yes, you are really good at that.
Well,
I'm a bit, I think, maybe more introverted than you. I'm just a bit more nervous in social situations, so I don't really volunteer myself to go to networking events. So I'm much more of an online.
It's not, I mean, I don't know. Part of it is a nervous thing so I go because I want to see who's there and I want to like talk and meet people.
Yes.
And then I get nervous, so I just talk about myself because that's what I know.
Yeah, I think it's hard when you go into these situations where you maybe don't know a single other person in the room. If we lived together in the same city, I'm sure we would hit these places together. But thank God for Skype so that we can actually talk about fashion.
I want to say that because, okay, some of these are hit or miss, especially if you're not living in a fab. I mean, even if you are, I've been to some networking events in New York, like fashion networking, that were not that great. But really, I kind of enjoy going where I don't know people because then I can go to every single person in the room and I will find I make that my goal is to connect with at least one person. And so then you have to talk to everybody to see who that person is. And
yeah.
I don't know, I think it's fun.
Yeah, doing trade shows has really made me open up to talking to people that I don't know, just because obviously in a sales environment, you have to talk to people because you don't know if they're a potential buyer or not. You hope they are if they're at a trade show, but you also never know. So that's been really great for me just to travel around, and the nature of my business being on the trade show circuit is that I do get to travel around. And I get to go to fab cities, New York twice a year, Paris twice a year, London twice a year, minimum. Not bragging, just like that is like that's my bread and butter. So that's how I meet my buyers. So while I'm there, I talk to loads of different types of people, and you do make connections, and you never know, even if they're not going to buy from you, you never know like who they're going to mention you to, or you know what's going to come of it.
That's actually a really great point because I think both of us, once we really sort of knew what our niche was, we were really able to go after it. And so for you, that's designing textiles. And for me, I focus very heavily on a certain style of knitwear. And I think what a lot of people try to do is they try to beat everything. And I know that you are super talented and you can do all of these things. But when you spread yourself so thin, when you talk to people, they don't really know, because people want to put you in a box, right or wrong. They want to put you in a box, and they don't quite, if you can do so much stuff, they don't quite know what to do with you, and it's less likely that you're going to get those referrals. Whereas if you're very specific and you're like, this is what I do and this is why I love it, which will come through naturally if you're this passionate about it. Oh, I can help you, or I know someone, or you know, like you'll stick in their mind.
Yeah. Well, and I think these niches, especially the two we're in, from our own experience, they seem so small until you get into them, and then you realize how big they are. So I think don't worry that you're narrowing down too small, because when you start working in that area and you start meeting people and working with clients or buyers, you'll realize this world is actually huge. You just didn't know about it.
Right. I mean, I have a very, very, very specific niche, and I mean, there's still so many people out there. Like I am like, it's really difficult, you know, for me to sort of look at others in my market. We should do like a separate one on comparison, because the market, even though it's super specific, is still so big that all I can think about is, oh, I need to do this next thing, you know?
So let's talk about some tips for making it work, how you can run your FAB business when you're not in a FAB city. A couple things other than internet, social media, just generally running your business online. Things don't seem obvious to you, and they didn't seem obvious to me, but you can run your business so successfully online. Just things like hiring people. I had a lot of people asking me if they could intern for me. This is before I was in a position to hire anyone to work with me. And I was like, no, sorry, I don't have the space for you. And also it would be a bit awkward because I was working out of my home and I'm not like near a FAB city. So how are you going to get to me? Most people expect that they'll be traveling into London to work for a studio. I think 90% of my competitors are in FAB cities, I have to say. So there are huge advantages, and I will, you know, hope to live in one and work from one in the future. But for now, running it out of a very tiny village, you can hire people and you can work with interns who want to learn from you. You just have to set it up online. And there are so many systems and processes you can use to do that. Just a few off the top of my head that we've been using a lot. We've been using Evernote a lot just to work with each other. Google Docs, you can save it all to Google Drive. Trello, it's kind of like post-it notes that you can organize online. Asana, which I personally don't use, but you can manage your team on there. We've created a team for ourselves on Trello. So there are lots of places that you can find online that will facilitate you running a business online without having to even mention that you're not in a great city.
On that same note, automating things on like Hootsuite or Buffer is so important, and it saves you so much time.
Yes.
The other thing that's really important are classes, and
yes, oh my god, yes.
There aren't any fashion classes in the area. I don't even know which city I would go to take any. So the internet does offer classes, and I know it's not the same as being in person, but if you can find something like on Craftsy or Skillshare, that's amazing.
I love Skillshare. I mean, even just like, you can never stop learning. You never know it all. I went to art school for 4 years and I will still take classes on Skillshare about how to draw certain flowers. And it's really helpful. And the great thing is you can do it in between your schedules. So I've got 2 kids at home, so I can do it at nap time, I can do it at night time. So you can just learn these skills that will help you. And, 30 years ago, I just pulled that figure out of nowhere. 30 years ago, we couldn't do that. We would not have been able to do that. We'd have had to go into the city to take these classes. I don't think there's a calligraphy course anywhere near around me, but I'm learning calligraphy online right now. And that's going to help me with screen printing or anything that I want to do for t-shirts or whatnot. But it's amazing how much there is online for us to learn from, and you just got to do it.
Also, don't be afraid of books, because I know that textbooks get a bad rap, but I actually have a collection of sewing and design and knitting.
Yes. For drafting, the books are the best for drafting.
Yes. Honestly, especially like yes, if you're in a hands-on class, yes, if you have a private tutor or a one-on-one teacher, like that's great. But really, you just need to open up a book. They have so much information, and you can learn like very quickly, very easily. And that is another way to really get your niche down and to really become a master, because when you incorporate different books, especially if you can find translated books from other cultures, your whole world can like really open up there. So one more tip, work two more tips actually. Work on your mindset, because if you are like cranky and you're like, well, I live in the middle of nowhere, I'm never going to be able to do this, this is, you know, nothing is here for me, you know, you're not going to find anything. You have to go into it with an open mind, and you have to really look, and you can create opportunities for yourself no matter where you are. And the second thing that I would really highly recommend is getting a business partner, or even just a friend in the industry, because having someone who kind of understands what you do and understands what you're going through is so key. And having someone that can keep you accountable. I mean, hopefully I appear wonderful, but like it's 8 a.m. for me. And the only reason I'm up right now is because Rachel is here with me and we're doing this. And I'm so excited to be doing this. But because if she wasn't involved this morning, I would have been like, wow, it's really cold and dark, I'm going to go back to bed. You know, and it wouldn't have gotten done. You know what I mean? Like having a partner is so important.
Ideally a FAB partner, because we've both always had our interests align and our businesses kind of align, and that's just made it so much more interesting for me to talk with you about it, because you actually understand what it is that I'm doing and you understand the challenges that we both face. So it's nice to have someone else who's like in the fashion accessory beauty world if you can.
Yes, definitely.
Hopefully we can create a community where you guys can meet each other. That's one of our goals.
Yes, that is definitely one of our goals. Hopefully that will be up very, very soon.
And we can meet all of you guys and we can get a bit of a different opinion sometimes.
Yeah, you can share your thoughts on us and be like, yeah, just we would love to actually hear what you guys think about this.
Totally.
Some of your struggles and where you live. Actually, I'm really curious where you guys live and what your biggest struggles are right now for starting or growing your FAB business.
Yeah, I'm also interested to meet anyone who is running an international business, who sells to clients in other countries or maybe travels around for trade shows, just because that's something that I have a whole different set of challenges for, and I would love to, talk to you about it.
Yes. So our main takeaways.
Yeah. So the one I was going to say is basically don't get discouraged, which Kristen kind of covered up a little earlier, but I felt like this was just not the right time for me to start my business. I'd missed the boat. I'd lived in some amazing FAB cities and I should have done it then, and whatever. And I went ahead and did it anyway. And I found it has been completely doable running my FAB business in my non-FAB village. It's not ever a problem. No one ever questions where I live or anything like that. And no one judges me for it. And it's just don't care what other people are going to say or think about it. If it's like logistically possible for you to do it, then just go ahead and do it.
Yes. I think that's one of the biggest things that living in New York really taught me, because I grew up in Memphis, and it wasn't until I moved to New York that I realized how many opportunities there were out there, how many different jobs there were out there. And you can make it work doing really whatever you want, especially now with the internet. And God, I feel a bit of old saying that, because like, remember when I was, young.
We are young.
We are young. But the internet is younger. So, but no, like that's one of the key takeaways. Like, I think that's the biggest thing that living in New York taught me, is that I can do anything that I want. There is a market for it, and it's completely possible.
Well, and that you'll never be ready. You'll never have everything in place. It will never be perfect. And also, when you're working in fashion, everything's going to change quite often. So there's no point in even knowing everything, because it's just going to change.
Yeah, I think that's the other thing is that a lot of people try to be experts, and you should. I know we just told you to like really get your niche down.
But you can do that while you're building your business. You don't have to wait until you've achieved expertdom before you start your business. Like I started my business, I knew the craft, but I did not know how to run a business, and I didn't know how to run this business. So I just went ahead and started it, and then learned from looking at what everyone else was doing, and then coming up with my own ideas once I knew what the standard was, changing the standard.
Right. I think that's actually
Visionary right here.
I think that's actually a really important distinction, because when you get to be an expert in something, you can almost do it second nature, and then it's not really fun anymore. You're not really innovating, are you? You're just doing what you know over and over again, and it might be really great and amazing, but is that fun? Is that interesting? Is that visionary, you know?
Exactly. Sometimes it's good not to know an industry so in and out before you start your own thing, because then it is tempting just to do what you did when you were working for someone and to just like do what is expected. And actually, I can see other businesses that do that, and it doesn't excite me looking at their products.
No, it really doesn't. It's far more interesting to sort of forge your own path, and I think it's a lot scarier. It can be a lot scarier just because you have no idea what you're doing and there isn't really a framework for it. However, that's where a lot of magic can happen, and that's really where you need to move forward.
Well, you have to enjoy what you're doing. Otherwise, why are we doing it? We might as well just work in corporate.
Not that there's anything wrong with corporate, if that's what you want.
No, there is nothing wrong with corporate, but probably if you don't feel that there's something wrong in corporate for you, then you're probably not going to be listening to us anyway.
Right. I just wanted to put that disclaimer out there.
No, Kristen will keep it PC for me.
I mean, I try.
Yeah, we balance each other out. So thank you everyone for listening and watching today and joining us as fab entrepreneurs that we are. And we just have, one favor to ask of you, which is sign up so that you don't miss us out there when you're busy learning all these new skills, that you can hear from us. We're hoping to post these videos every Wednesday, and now Kristen has been talking to us about accountability. I'm going to start saying we're definitely posting these videos every Wednesday, 10 a.m. Eastern time, right, Kristen?
Yeah, 10 a.m. Eastern time. And we have a YouTube channel if you want to watch us, or a podcast if you just want to listen to us on the go. But if you sign up for the email list, you will get links to both of those each Wednesday.
Yeah, we're also on Instagram and Facebook at Fab Entrepreneurs. Please let us know any comments you have, or questions, or even just suggestions for things that you'd like us to talk about, that you would like be interested to hear, because we want to help you guys. We're doing this so that we can help you guys, because we were a little further down the line and we were there, and we want to give you what we didn't have. So let us know what it is that you need help with, and we'll try to help you.
Right, exactly. We may not know something super specific if you have your super specific niche already, but we can definitely point you in the right direction and help you.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, well, I guess that's it for today. So thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye.